So guys, I don't even know when the camera got closed by itself. So I'm just starting from where I left off. Um, so we were talking about the freezing of foreign reserves, turning point. One of the most consequential financial events in the recent geopolitics was the freezing of Russia's central bank reserves. This signaled to the world that foreign uh, reserves held in the Western systems were not politically neutral assets. They could be immobilized during conflict. The global reaction, many nations began reassessing reserve strategies, increasing gold holdings, diversifying currency holdings, and exploring local trade uh, through local currency. Trust in the neutrality of the financial system declined. This accelerated structural financial fragmentation. De-dollarization, a myth or a reality? So de-dollarization refers to the efforts to reduce dependence on the US dollar in the global trade. Drivers include sanctions risk, strategic autonomy goals, bilateral trade agreements. Emerging trends. Examples include oil trades in yuan, India purchasing Russian oil in non-dollar currencies, bilateral currency swaps, BRICS settlement discussions. However, structural realities remain. Dollar liquidity is unmatched, US financial markets remain deepest, global debt still dollar denominated. Thus, de-dollarization is gradual, not imminent collapse. BRICS economic counterweight formation. So BRICS nations seek to expand financial coordination. Core members include Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. Expansion invitations have extended to Middle Eastern and Global South states. Um, Strategic objectives of BRICS. The initiatives include development financing alternatives, local currency trade, payment system development, and reserve diversification. It is less a unified bloc, more a platform for reducing Western financial dependency. Trade corridor competition. Infrastructure now shapes economic powers projection. Major corridors projects include Belt and Road Initiative, China's flagship trade network, land corridors through Eurasia, maritime routes through Indian Ocean, and port investments globally. This reduces reliance on Western controlled sea lanes. India Middle East Europe corridor, proposed connectivity linking to Indian ports, Gulf logistics hubs, and European markets, seen as a counterbalance to Chinese trade routes. Arctic routes, melting ice is opening northern shipping lanes, reducing transit time between Asia and Europe. Russia and China are investing heavily there. Supply chain decoupling. Globalization created hyper efficient supply chains but also strategic vulnerabilities. COVID plus geopolitical rivalry exposed risks. Um, Decoupling trends. Western firms are diversifying manufacturing to India, Vietnam, Mexico, and Southeast Asia. This is called China plus one strategy. Goal is to reduce dependence on a single geopolitical rival. Technology export controls. Economic warfare increasingly targets uh, technology access. Restrictions include semiconductor exports, AI chip sales, advanced manufacturing tools. These control aim to slow rival technological advancements. Technology denial is now a geopolitical weapon. Energy trade as financial leverage. Energy transactions shape currency flows. Examples: petrodollar system historically tied oil to dollar trade. Yuan-based oil trades emerging. Sanctions redirecting energy markets, and energy and currency power are deeply intertwined. Structural transformation of globalization. We are not witnessing the end of globalization, but its fragmentation. Emerging features include regional trade blocks, currency diversification, strategic industries reshoring, infrastructure rivalry. Globalization is becoming geopolitical rather than purely economic. So, the battlefield on the 21st century is not defined by soldiers but by bankers, traders, and central banks. Currency systems now shape sovereignty, trade routes shape alliances, financial sanctions shape war outcomes. Yet, beneath economics lies an even deeper driver of power, that is, energy. Oil, gas, shipping choke points, and resource flows, the fuels that power both economies and empires. To understand geopolitical leverage, we must now examine the global energy chessboard. The part 5 is about energy and resource wars, uh, fueling global power. We will cover OPEC plus geopolitics, Russia gas leverage, Europe energy crisis, strait choke points, and rare earth dominance, and lastly, lithium and energy, green energy race. So, part 5, energy and resource wars, fueling power, oil and gas, and the geopolitical survival. Opening transition is um, behind every military machine, behind every industrial economy, behind every global superpower lies a simple foundation, that is energy. Oil powers armies, gas heats nations, minerals build technologies, control energy and you influence geopolitics, deny energy and you cripple economies. The struggle for resources is not new, but in the modern era it has become system defining. Oil, the bloodstream of industrial civilization. Since the early 20th century, oil has been the most strategically valuable commodity on earth. It fuels military logistics, aviation, naval fleets, manufacturing, transportation, and agriculture. Modern warfare itself is oil dependent. Without fuel, mechanized armies collapse. The petrodollar system, one of the most consequential geopolitical arrangements, emerged in the 1970s. Oil exports began being priced primarily in US dollars. This created a petrodollar system. Structural impact. If countries wanted oil, they needed dollars. This increased global dollar demand, strengthened US currency dominance, enabled US deficit financing. Energy markets became structurally tied to American financial power. OPEC, Energy Cartel Power. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries coordinates oil production levels. Key producers include Saudi Arabia, UAE, Iraq, Kuwait, and others. By adjusting output, OPEC can influence uh, global oil prices. OPEC plus Russia joins the energy chessboard. OPEC later expanded coordination with non-member producers like Russia. This became OPEC plus. This alignment allowed production cuts to stabilize prices, strategic coordination during crisis. Energy diplomacy now included Moscow alongside Gulf monarchies. Saudi Arabia, the swing energy superpower. So Saudi Arabia holds one of the uh, world's most largest oil reserves and spare production capacity. This gives Riyadh unique leverage. It can raise or lower output rapidly, influence global price stability, and coordinate with both US and Russia. In recent years, Saudi strategy has diversified, closer energy coordination with Russia, expanded trade with China, consideration of non dollar oil trade. Energy exporters are hedging geopolitically. Russia, energy as a strategic weapon. Russia is one of the world's largest exporter of natural gas, oil, and petroleum products. European dependence. For decades, Europe relied heavily on Russian gas via pipelines like Nord Stream, Yamal routes, Ukrainian transit lines. This created a mutual dependency. Europe needed energy, Russia needed revenue. Ukraine war impact. After the invasion, Europe reduced Russian imports, LNG shipments increased, energy prices surged. Russia redirected exports toward Asia, especially India and China. Energy trade patterns reshaped global markets. LNG, liquefied geopolitics. Liquefied natural gas transformed energy transport. Unlike pipelines, LNG can be shipped globally. Major exporters include United States, Qatar, and Australia. LNG provided Europe alternative supply after Russian reductions. Energy security became maritime rather than pipeline dependent. Strait checkpoints, geography of energy risk. Global energy flows pass through narrow maritime corridors. These checkpoints are geopolitical pressure points. Strait of Hormuz, located between Iran and the Gulf states, roughly one fifth of the global oil supply passes through it. Any closure would trigger immediate global price shock. Iran has periodically threatened disruption. Bab al Mandeb links Real Sea to Arabian Sea, critical for Europe Asia shipping via Suez Canal. Instability here impacts trade and energy transit. Malacca Strait connects Indian Ocean to Pacific, vital for uh, East Asian energy imports, especially China. China calls this vulnerability the Malacca dilemma. Rare earth minerals, the hidden resource war. Modern technology depends on rare earth metals and elements. They are essential for smartphones, EV batteries, wind turbines, missile guidance systems, and advanced electronics. China's dominance. China controls majority of global processing capacity, significant mining output, refinement infrastructure. This gives Beijing leverage over global tech manufacturing supply chains. Western nations are now racing to diversify sourcing. Lithium and the green energy race. As the world transitions toward renewable energy, new resource dependencies are emerging. Lithium is crucial for energy vehicles, battery storage, and renewable grids. Lithium Triangle. Major reserves lie in Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. Control over lithium supply chains will shape the future of energy geopolitics just as oil did in the 20th century. Energy transition, cooperation or conflict. The shift to green energy introduces paradoxes, cooperation drivers. First is agreements, the other is technology sharing, and the last is emission targets. Now let's talk about conflict drivers. Rare mineral competition, supply chain control, and industrial policy subsidies. Energy transition is not purely environmental, it is geopolitical, industrial restructuring. Structural energy realities. Key long term patterns include fossil fuels remain dominant in near term, renewables rising but resource intensive, energy exporters diversifying alliances, importers securing supply redundancy. So, energy security remains national security. Oil shaped the 20th century, gas reshaped European geopolitics, rare minerals will shape the technological future. Energy is not just a fuel, it is leverage. Yet, even energy does not define the ultimate balance of power. The next great rivalry is unfolding not in oil fields but in laboratories, semiconductor fabs, and artificial intelligence systems. To understand the future hierarchy of nations, we must now enter the technology Cold War. The next part is technology Cold War, AI, chips, and digital power. So, we will cover semiconductor wars, Taiwan chip dependency, US export bans, AI arms race, quantum computing, cyber warfare, and satellite warfare. So here we go. In the industrial age, power came from oil, but in the nuclear age, power came from weapons. But in the digital age, power comes from computation. The nations that control chips, artificial intelligence, quantum systems, and cyber infrastructure will define the next global hierarchy. This is not a technological competition, but it is a civilizational arms race. From industrial war to technological war. Historically, great powers competed through industrial output, naval fleets, nuclear arsenals. Today, technological ecosystems determine military precision, economic productivity, surveillance capacity, cyber defense, and lastly, innovation speed. Technology is no longer a sector of geopolitics. It is its foundation. Semiconductors, the strategic choke point. Semiconductors or microchips power modern civilization. They are embedded in smartphones, data centers, fighter jets, missiles, satellites, and AI systems. Without chips, modern economies and militaries halt. The supply chain concentration problem. Advanced chip manufacturing is geographically concentrated, particularly in Taiwan. Taiwan produces the majority of the world's um, most advanced semiconductors. This creates a system vulnerability. If Taiwan's production stops, global tech supply chains collapse. Military electronics production slows, and AI development bottlenecks. This is why Taiwan is not just a political flashpoint but a technological one. US China semiconductor war. Recognizing this dependency, the United States has imposed export controls targeting China's chip sector. Restrictions include advanced semiconductor exports, AI GPU chips, lithography equipment, fabrication tools. The goal is strategic slowdown to delay China's ability to produce cutting edge chips domestically. China's response. So, China has launched massive state backed semiconductor investment programs. Objectives include domestic fabrication capacity, indigenous chip design, and supply chain independence. However, advanced chip manufacturing requires decades of ecosystem development. This makes semiconductors the central bottleneck in China's tech ascent. AI, the new strategic high ground. Artificial intelligence is rapidly becoming the defining technology of power. AI enables autonomous weapons, cyber defense, surveillance systems, economic optimization, and intelligence analysis. Military applications. AI transforms warfare through drone swarms, automated targeting, battlefield prediction, logistics optimization. This reduces human reaction time in conflict scenarios. Future wars may be decided at algorithmic speed. Economic applications. AI enhances manufacturing automation, financial modeling, medical research, supply chain optimization. Nations leading in AI gain exponential productivity advantages. Data, the fuel of AI power. AI systems require vast data sets. Data enables machine learning training, behavioral modeling, and pattern recognition. Countries with large digital populations generate more data, a structural advantage. This is why digital platforms themselves have geopolitical implications. Quantum computing, the next breakthrough. Quantum computing remains early stage, but its implications are revolutionary. Capabilities could include breaking encryption, ultra fast simulations, advanced materials discovery. If one nation achieves quantum supremacy first, it could disrupt cybersecurity globally. Encryption systems protecting finance and defense could become obsolete. Cyber warfare, the shadow conflict. Cyber conflict operates continuously below war thresholds. Targets include power grids, banks, government databases, and telecom infrastructure. Cyber attacks offer strategic disruption without kinetic escalation. Strategic features: cyber warfare allows plausible deniability, low cost asymmetric attacks, and infrastructure paralysis. Nations invest heavily in both offensive and defensive cyber capabilities. The digital battlefield is always active, even in peacetime. Satellite and space technology. Modern military systems depend on satellite network for navigation, surveillance, missile tracking, communication. Disabling satellites blinds military operations. Anti-satellite weapons. Multiple powers have tested ASAT systems capable of kinetic satellite destruction, electronic jamming, and cyber interference. Future wars may begin with orbital strikes rather than ground invasions. Digital infrastructure. 5G and network control. Telecommunications infrastructure shapes data sovereignty. Control over 5G networks impacts military communications, economic data flows, surveillance capabilities. This is why telecom companies became geopolitical flashpoints. Infrastructure is equal to influence. Technology alliances forming. Technology competition is creating alliance ecosystems. Examples include chip supply chain partnerships, AI research coalitions, cyber defense treaties. Technology blocks are emerging parallel to military blocks. Structural technology realities. Key long term dynamics include technological superiority determines military advantage, AI reduces manpower reliance, and cyber warfare blurs war peace boundaries. Semiconductor supply chains remain fragile. Space infrastructure becomes strategic high ground. The future balance of power will depend less on troop numbers and more on processing power. The empires of the future will not be defined by the land alone, but by code, chips, and computation. The nations that lead in artificial intelligence control military speed, economic productivity, surveillance depth. Yet, among all technological powers, one state is executing the most comprehensive long term grand strategy of expansion. Infrastructure, trade routes, military modernization, financial networks. To understand the structural challenger to the existing world order, we must now examine the grand strategy of China. China's grand strategy: infrastructure, influence, and expansion. We will deep cover Belt and Road Initiative, debt diplomacy debate, string of pearls bases, Africa and Latin America outreach, Taiwan timeline, military modernization, Yuan internationalization. So, here we go. Every rising power in history has followed a grand strategy. Britain built sea routes, America built alliances, China is building infrastructure, railways across continents, ports across oceans, digital networks across societies. This is not a random development financing, it is a long horizon geopolitical architecture designed to reshape trade, influence, and power projection in the 21st century. Historical context: from humiliation to rejuvenation. Modern Chinese grand strategy is rooted in historical memory. Chinese political doctrine frequently references the century of humiliation. This period, roughly mid 19th to mid 20th century, saw colonial incursions, unequal treaties, territorial concessions, economic subordination. The modern Chinese state frames its rise as national rejuvenation, not expansion for ideology, but a restoration of civilizational status. This psychological framing shapes long term planning. The Belt and Road Initiative Global Infrastructure Network was launched in 2013. The Belt and Road Initiative BRI is China's flagship external strategy, It consists of two main components: the Silk Road economic belt, which is land, uh, I mean through land, rail and road corridors linking China to Central Asia to Europe, and China to Russia to Europe, and lastly China to Middle East. This reduces reliance on maritime shipping routes. The Maritime Silk Road, it is via sea. The port infrastructure spanning Southeast Asia, Indian Ocean, East Africa, Mediterranean. This creates logical corridors for trade and potential naval access. Strategic objectives of BRI: BRI serves multiple overlapping goals. Trade route diversification reduces dependence on Western controlled sea lanes. Industrial export channels using overseas projects to absorb domestic overcapacity. Resource access, securing energy and raw material supply chains. Political influence, building long term diplomatic goodwill. And financial integration, expanding yuan settlement networks. Infrastructure becomes influence. Debt diplomacy, criticism and reality. Critics argue BRI creates unsustainable debt burdens for recipient nations. Cases often cited include port leases or renegotiations when countries face repayment difficulties. From this perspective, debt becomes dependency, and dependency becomes strategic leverage. China's counter argument: Beijing frames BRI as development financing, infrastructure gap filling, south to south, south to south cooperation. Many participating states voluntarily seek Chinese capital due to faster project execution, fewer governance conditions, large scale funding availability. Reality lies between narratives. Some projects succeed economically, others create fiscal strain. String of Pearls, Indian Ocean Strategy. The String of Pearls refers to the network of Chinese funded ports across the Indian Ocean. Locations include Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, East Africa, officially commercial but strategically dual use. Strategic purpose: these ports provide refueling access, logistics nodes, trade security points. Over time, they could support naval operations, extending China's maritime reach beyond the Pacific. This has major implications for India's security calculus. Africa, resource and diplomatic expansion. China has become one of the Africa's largest infrastructure financiers. Projects include railways, dams, roads, telecommunications. Strategic outcomes: China gains resource extraction agreements, construction contracts, political alignment in global forums. African states gain infrastructure investment often unavailable from Western lenders. It is transactional geopolitics. Latin America, Western Hemisphere entry. China has expanded trade and investment across Latin America, energy projects, mining investments, and agricultural imports. This represents entry into a region historically influenced by the United States. Economic presence precedes strategic presence. Military modernization, hard power, backbone. Economic expansion is paired with military modernization. China has invested heavily in naval fleet expansion, hypersonic missiles, cyber warfare units, space capabilities. Naval focus: China is building a blue water navy capable of operating far from home waters. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines extend maritime reach. This protects trade routes and overseas interests. Taiwan, the central strategic objective. Among all geopolitical priorities, Taiwan remains the most symbolically and strategically significant. Drivers include territorial sovereignty claims, semiconductor control, national reunification narrative. China prefers peaceful integration but has not ruled out military options. Taiwan is both political legitimacy issue and technological choke point. Yuan internationalization. China seeks to expand global use of its currency, that is yuan. Steps include bilateral trade settlements in yuan, energy purchases denominated in yuan, and financial clearing systems development. Goal. Goal is to reduce exposure to dollar-based transaction coercion. However, capital controls and financial transparency constraints limit rapid yuan adoption. Structural logic of China's strategy. China's grand strategy operates across synchronized layers: infrastructure to trade influence, trade, uh, political leverage, strategic access, military reach. It is long term, incremental, and system oriented, less alliance driven, more network driven. China's rise is not accidental, it is engineered through infrastructure, finance, technology, and military modernization. It does not seek immediate confrontation but gradual structural repositioning. Yet the future world order will not be shaped by China and the United States alone. There exists a civilization that aligns with both, trades with all, and seeks strategic autonomy rather than block subordination. A swing power whose rise could rebalance the entire global system. To understand the multipolar future, we must now examine the geopolitical role of India. India, the swing civilization. We will deep cover strategic autonomy doctrine, Quad versus BRICS balancing, Russia's defense ties, US tech partnerships, manufacturing shift, demographics advantage, Indian Ocean strategy. So, in every transitional world order, there are dominant powers, rising challengers, and swing civilizations. States that do not submit to blocks but leverage them. India represents one of the most consequential swing powers of the 21st century, a civilizational state, balancing alliances, economics, and security while pursuing strategic autonomy in an increasingly polarized world. Civilizational state, not just a nation state. So, India's geopolitical behavior cannot be understood purely through modern nation state frameworks. It operates with civilizational identity consciousness, strategic memory of colonial subjugation, and desire for autonomous great power status. India does not seek integration into another power systems. It seeks elevation with the global hierarchy on its own terms. Strategic autonomy doctrine. India's foreign policy doctrine emphasizes independence of alignment, historically rooted in the non aligned movement. Modern strategic autonomy means partnering without subordination, cooperating without alliance entrapment, hedging across rival blocs. This doctrine enables India to extract benefits from multiple geopolitical poles simultaneously. Third, the Quad, Indo-Pacific balancing. Indo-Pacific balancing. India is a member of Quadrilateral Security Dialogue alongside United States, Japan, and Australia. The Quad focuses on maritime security, supply chain resilience, technology cooperation, and Indo-Pacific stability. It is widely viewed as a soft balancing mechanism uh, with surface China's regional assertiveness. However, India has resisted transforming the Quad into a formal military alliance. Autonomy remains paramount. BRICS, Multipolar Economic Platform. Simultaneously, India participates in BRICS alongside Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa. BRICS focuses on development, financing, currency diversification, and global south coordination. India's presence reflects its multipolar worldview, not Western bloc alignment. Russia defense legacy relationship. India maintains long standing defense ties with Russia. Historically, Russia supplied fighter aircraft, tanks, missile systems, submarines. Even amid Western sanctions on Moscow, India has continued defense procurement, purchased discounted Russian oil. This reflects strategic necessity rather than ideological alignment. Russia remains a critical military supplier during India's defense indigenization transition. United States technology and strategic partnership. Parallel to Russia's ties, India has deepened relationships with the United States. Areas of cooperation include semiconductor manufacturing, AI development, defense technology sharing, Indo Pacific maritime security. The US views India as a counterweight to China's regional influence. India views the US as a technology and capital partner, not a treaty guarantor. Manufacturing shift China plus one. As global supply chains diversify away from China, India is emerging as a major alternative manufacturing hub. Drivers include large labor force, expanding infrastructure, government production incentives, and digital governance systems. Sectors attracting investments include electronics, pharmaceuticals, defense manufacturing, automotive supply chains. Industrial capacity translates into geopolitical weight. Demographic advantage. India possesses one of the youngest populations among major powers. Demographic dynamics include expanding workforce, urbanization uh, growth, consumption expansion. This contrasts sharply with aging populations in Europe, Japan, China, post one child policy effects. Demographics influence long term economic and military capacity. Population structure shapes power trajectories. Indian Ocean strategy. Geography grants India natural maritime leverage. The Indian Ocean hosts critical sea lanes linking Middle Eastern energy, Asian manufacturing, European markets, and India has expanded naval deployments, maritime surveillance, port partnerships. This counters extra regional naval expansion and protects trade flows. Control of sea lanes equals strategic influence. Global South leadership. India increasingly positions itself as a voice for developing nations. Themes include debt sustainability, climate equity, and development financing reform. This diplomatic posture enhances India's soft power influence across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Structural role in multipolarity. India's geopolitical function can be summarized as a balancer in US China rivalry, a bridge between West and the global South, a manufacturing alternative to China, a maritime stabilizer in the Indo Pacific. India's choices will influence bloc stability. If it aligns decisively, it shifts global equilibrium. If it remains autonomous, multipolarity deepens. India does not seek to inherit the existing world order nor to dismantle it. It seeks to reshape it gradually, autonomously, and civilizationally. Yet beyond Asia, another region is undergoing a profound geopolitical transformation. A region long defined by war, intervention, and ideological conflict, now entering uh, an era of strategic realignment. Energy, religion, trade routes, and great power diplomacy intersect here. To understand the future balance of power, we must now examine the Middle East reset. Middle East reset. energy alliances and the regional realignment. Here we will cover Iran Saudi rapprochement, China diplomatic entry, Abraham Accords, Israel conflicts, Turkey regional ambitions, Red Sea crisis, Gulf multipolar diplomacy. So, Middle East reset, that is our part 9, and for decades the Middle East was viewed as the world's permanent crisis zone. Wars in Iraq, civil conflict in Syria, nuclear tensions with Iran, sectarian rivalries across the Gulf. External powers intervened militarily. Regional powers competed ideologically, and proxy wars became the norm. But beneath the turbulence, structural shifts were unfolding. Today, the Middle East is not dissolving into chaos; it is reorganizing into a new geopolitical architecture. From US dominance to multi power presence. For much of the late 20th and early 21st century, the United States was the primary external power in the region. US influence rested on military bases across the Gulf, security guarantees to monarchies, energy trade partnerships, and intervention capability. However, recent decades have seen gradual recalibration. Drivers include US war fatigue after Iran and Afghanistan, domestic energy independence, strategic pivot toward Indo Pacific. This creates space for other powers to enter diplomatically. Iran Saudi rivalry, sectarian and strategic. For years, the Iran Saudi rivalry defined regional polarization. Dimensions included sectarian divide. Iran is a Shia leadership and Saudi Arabia is a Sunni leadership. Proxy arenas, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. Both states competed for ideological and geopolitical influence. This rivalry destabilized multiple regional theaters. Iran Saudi rapprochement. A major diplomatic shift occurred when Iran and Saudi Arabia agreed to restore relations after years of hostility, and the agreement reduced immediate escalation risks. It signaled uh, regional fatigue with proxy conflict, desire for economic stability, strategic hedging, and uh, amid global multipolarity. Notably, the diplomatic facilitation involved China, marking Beijing's entry into Middle East diplomacy. China's diplomatic entry. China's growing role in the region differs from the US model. Beijing emphasizes trade, energy partnerships, infrastructure investment, and non interference diplomacy. China imports large volumes of Middle East energy and making regional stability economically critical. Diplomatic mediation enhances its soft power presence. Abraham Accords, Israeli normalization. Another structural shift has been normalization normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab states. These agreements created diplomatic recognition and economic cooperation, security coordination. Motivations included shared concern over Iranian influence, technological partnerships, economic diversification goals. Regional alignments began shifting from ideological hostility into pragmatic cooperation. Israeli Palestinian conflict, persistent flashpoint. Despite normalization trends, the Israeli Palestinian conflict remains unresolved. Periodic escalations impact regional public opinion, diplomatic relations, and security calculations. Military group activity and Israeli military responses risk broader regional spillover if escalation expands. Thus, Normalization coexists with structural instability. Iran regional network strategy. Iran exerts influence through a network of allied non-state actors and militias across the region. These relationships provide strategic depth, deterrence against adversaries, influence in regional conflicts. This model allows Iran to project power without conventional military confrontation. It is asymmetric regional strategy. Turkey neo regional power projection. Turkey has pursued an increasingly independent regional posture. Strategic initiatives include military operations in northern Syria, eastern Mediterranean uh, energy exploration, defense industry expansion, influence in Caucasus conflicts. Turkey balances NATO membership with autonomous regional ambitions. It is both alliance participant and independent actor. Gulf economic transformation. Gulf monarchies are diversifying beyond hydrocarbons. Economic reforms include sovereign wealth fund investments, tourism development, technology partnerships, infrastructure mega projects. The goal is post oil economic sustainability. This requires regional stability, incentivizing diplomatic de escalation. Red Sea and maritime security. The Red Sea has emerged as a strategic maritime pressure zone. Shipping disruptions impact Europe Asia trade, energy transport, insurance markets. Naval deployments by multiple powers underscore the corridor's global importance. Choke point insecurity translates into economic ripple effects worldwide. Structural transformation of the region. Key long term patterns include reduced direct US military intervention, increased multipolar diplomatic presence, energy exports hedging alliances, economic diversification reducing war incentives, proxy conflicts persisting but moderated. The Middle East is shifting from ideological background to transactional geopolitical arena. The Middle East is no longer defined solely by war but by recalibration. Old rivalries are cooling, new partnerships are forming, external powers are competing through diplomacy rather than invasion. Yet, all these regional transformations across Europe, energy, uh, uh, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and the global south converge into one final question. What kind of world order is emerging from this transition? Will it be stable multipolarity, proxy conflict fragmentation, or systemic great power confrontation? To answer that, we must now project the geopolitical future. Part 10. The Future World Order 2030 to 2050 projections. So we will forecast multipolar stability scenario, proxy war century, US China direct conflict risk, tech surveillance world, civilizational power resurgence, demographics reshaping power, AI and labor disruption, geopolitics. Everything before this built the structure: power blocks, wars, economic systems, energy leverage, technology rivalry, China's expansion, India's balancing role, Middle East realignment. Now we synthesize it all into forward projection, not prediction as certainty, but scenario modeling as political science analysis. So, the future world order scenarios for humanity's geopolitical future 2030 to 2050. Let's move. So, history does not move randomly, it moves through structures, economic pressures, technological shifts, demographic waves, and power transitions. The events we see today are not isolated crises; they are early signs of systemic transformations. To understand what the world may become, we must project the trajectories already in motion. Scenario 1: stability, stable multipolarity. In this future, no single superpower dominates globally. Instead, power distributes across major poles. United States military plus financial dominance, China manufacturing plus infrastructure sphere, India demographic plus economic rise, Europe regulatory plus economic bloc, regional powers, energy and geography leverage. Characteristics: competitive coexistence, trade fragmentation but continued exchange, regional spheres of influence, managed military deterrence. Great powers avoid direct war due to nuclear deterrence and economic interdependence. This resembles a 19th century balance of power system but globally scaled. Scenario 2: the proxy war century. Here, the great powers avoid direct confrontation but fight through regional intermediaries. Features include arms transfer to partner states, militia and non-state actor backing, cyber sabotage campaigns, economic blockades. Conflict zones multiply across Africa, Middle East, Indo-Pacific, Eastern Europe. This creates chronic instability without global war. Scenario 3: great power conflict. This is the lowest probability but highest impact scenario. Potential triggers include Taiwan escalation, NATO Russia miscalculation, South China Sea naval clash. However, nuclear deterrence creates escalation ceilings. Direct war would carry catastrophic global economic consequences. Thus, most strategists view full scale great power war as structurally constrained, not though not impossible. Scenario 4: technological hegemony world. In this scenario, technological dominance outweighs traditional military power. Key features: AI driven economic systems, autonomous warfare, mass surveillance states, algorithmic governance. Nations leading in AI and quantum computing would possess military decision speed advantage, cyber dominance, economic productivity superiority. Power shifts from industrial capacity to computational capacity. Scenario 5: civilizational resurgence. Beyond nation states, civilizational identities reassert influence. Examples include India's cultural civilizational diplomacy, China's historical rejuvenation narrative, Islamic world political consolidation, and Western identity recalibration. Geopolitics becomes shaped not just by borders but by civilizational self conceptions. Demographics, the silent power variable. Population structure shapes long term power capacity. Aging powers. Regions facing demographic contraction include Europe, Japan, South Korea, China. Post one child legacy effects. Aging populations strain labor supply, military recruitment, welfare systems. Young powers. Regional with Regions with demographic expansions include India, Africa, Southeast Asia. Youth populations drive economic growth potential, military manpower, and consumption markets. Demographics influence geopolitical momentum across decades, urbanization, and megacity power. By mid century, most humans will live in urban zones. Megacities become economic engines, innovation hubs, political pressure centers. Urban infrastructure resilience becomes national security concern. AI and labor disruption, internal geopolitics. Artificial intelligence may transform domestic stability. Potential impacts include job displacement, productivity surges, wealth concentration, social unrest risk. States that manage AI transition effectively will maintain internal cohesion. Those that may fail face uh, those that fail may face domestic instability regardless of external strength. Ninth, climate and resource pressure. Climate change acts as geopolitical threat multiplier. Impacts include water scarcity conflicts, agricultural migration, Arctic competition, disaster driven instability. Climate stress intersects with fragile governance systems, amplifying conflict risk. The most likely system, hybrid multipolarity. Rather than one singular scenario, the most probable future blends elements, multipolar power distribution, proxy conflicts, technological rivalry, economic fragmentation, managed deterrence. This creates a world of persistent competition but systemic interdependence. Structural long-term patterns. Across all projections, several constants emerge. No single hegemon replaces US unipolarity fully. China rises but faces structural constraints. India's trajectory influences system balance. Technology reshapes power faster than territory. Energy transition restructures alliances. Nuclear deterrence caps great world, great power war. The future is competitive but not necessarily apocalyptic. The world order is not collapsing, it is evolving. The unipolar age is fading, replaced not by chaos but by layered multipolarity. Great powers compete, regional powers hedge, civilizations reassert identity, technology accelerates transformation. The map of the future is being drawn not by one nation but by the interaction of the many. And the question that remains is not which power will dominate, but whether humanity can navigate this transition without repeating the catastrophic wars that reshaped the last century. So that was it for today's video. I hope you guys must have uh, liked it, and we'll see you back in the new video. Thank you and hope you have a wonderful one.